Welcome, friends and colleagues, to our full voice live office hours. I want to say hello to everybody first who is here in my Zoom room. We've got people from all over the world, which is incredible and so humbling. So thank you to my Canadian friends, to my American friends, and friends internationally. We love you. It's so wonderful that you're here. Today, in our live office hours, I have a very interesting and somewhat controversial topic. We're talking about redefining success in learning, or redefining success in our voice studios. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And I want everybody to let me know. Can you see my screen? Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So we're talking about redefining success in learning, in lessons. Before we get started, because I want to just kind of introduce ourselves and what we do here at Full Voice Music. If we have not met, my name is Nikki Loney. And as my partner Mim likes to say, I'm the boss of it all. I like to call myself the Chief Creative Officer, which gives me license to be distracted sometimes. Mim's laughing because keeping me on task is hard. Full Voice Music is a small but fierce educational publishing company. We're in Canada. I'm actually in a teeny tiny rural area called Hemford Forest in Nova Scotia. We have been specializing in vocal music and teaching resources for young singing students. And we have been doing that for over 20 years. We love to share creative, inclusive, and engaging singing pedagogy. And today is part of our pedagogy series, Live Office Hours. And we've been doing this. We do this live, free teacher webinar every month, once a month, and we have a topic that is burning in our studios that people need to know about. And when you register, you get to ask questions about the topic. So this presentation is actually based on a lot of the questions that were submitted when people registered. If you have missed any of our previous live office hours, and friends, there are some wonderful ones. We've had wonderful guests like Donna Rodenizer, like Dr. Ginevra Williams, talking about hot topics in vocal pedagogy. Now, our other opportunities for learning, convenient on-the-go learning, is our Full Voice podcast. It is now in its 9th season, and this Friday we are going to be releasing our 200th episode. And it has been such a journey. And if you ever feel bad, maybe you can't make it to like a big teaching convention, here's a hot tip. We usually have the keynote speakers and presenters on our podcast. So if you can't make it to a convention, you can listen to the podcast for free. Anyhow, now we also enjoy doing Zoom room teacher workshops. These are deep dives into specific topics. And with all of our workshops, you go away with handfuls of hands-on materials, music, and resources to take into your studio right away. We usually do a couple of these every quarter. And we also have self-study on-demand online courses. And these are at your own pace, study in your pajamas type kind of opportunities. And today's prize is access to one of our courses, the Play-Based Learning, Engagement, and Lesson Pacing. Now, if you've already done this course and you've won a prize, we will then send you the Holiday Song Bundle, which has our 2 Christmassy activity booklets for students, and there's 20 copies there. So we'll send that to you in the mail. So that is a little bit about the pedagogy that we share and that we love to share, but let's get into our presentation. And I just want to make sure, just setting up my screen here. I'm just going to put the chat down here. I do try to keep my eye on the chat for our guests that are here. So I'm going to put that down there. So let's talk about success in learning. So before we can redefine success in our studios, we need to talk about what success may possibly look like. And that's different for everyone. Success in learning is a very complex topic, and at times it can be very controversial. There's a lot of factors that play into whether a student is going to be successful or not. Some of them are in our control, some of them aren't. And there's a lot of different opinions on what the best way is to make sure that students have the success in learning that they deserve. The first thing we need to look at is our teaching philosophy. So there are traditional teacher-centered approaches. Those are master-apprentice approaches. That is prevalent in a lot of higher level learning. Many of us going through school at a higher level had what I would call master-apprentice or teacher-centered approaches. We had to meet the master where they were, and we were apprenticed by them. Now we also have a lot of people talking about student-centered teaching philosophies. Now I want to just clarify something. Student-centered does not mean that the kids or the students take over. They're not in charge, but they have more say. So sometimes our feathers get ruffled because we think it's just a free-for-all and the kids get to do what they want. That's not what we're saying here. It's the difference between structured curriculums where there's tests and grades and very defined measures of success versus a personalized learning where the information is customized for that student, and the student has advocacy in being part of choosing those success measures. So that's one of the things we have to kind of take into consideration when we're looking at student success, when we're looking at our studio culture and how we disseminate information. And of course, definitions of success are different as well. Some teachers, some humans, not just teachers, some students, parents, and teachers really need to see academic achievement. They need a mark. They need a grade in order to measure their success. That is a very clearly defined measure of success. Whereas some teachers, some students, some parents are looking for more practical skills or looking for a place for creativity, a place where students can develop as humans and not necessarily be marked in a way that is so rigid. So there's two different kinds of ways of looking at the definition of success and what our goals are. And of course, in learning, we have to recognize the individual differences of our students. Every student has varying learning styles, strengths, challenges. They also have varying interests and goals. Now, the one thing that I think every single one of us was exposed to during the pandemic, if you were teaching, was access to resources. How many people had students that had lousy internet connections? Right? How many have you had those students that had old iPads that wanted nothing to do with Zoom? Yeah. How many of you had families that were trying to figure out who got to use the device at what time because they only had so many devices for so many children, right? So here's a fun fact. I don't know if anyone knows. In Nova Scotia, when the pandemic began, most of Nova Scotia, for the record, is rural. We're all out in the boonies. There's a couple key centers, but the rest is just trees and rocks. When the pandemic hit, most of rural Nova Scotia did not have high-speed internet access. None of the kids could do online learning when the pandemic happened because the government was still fighting with the internet providers, and it was a mess. So talk about access to resources, right? And then, of course, we also have to look at support. Not every student has this, or human has the same amount of support. You could have a parent that is a single parent. You could have a parent that has more than one child, and their attention is not just with that one child. You could have a parent that has never had music lessons and really just doesn't know anything about music. So when we're looking at success and what success looks at, and we're setting measures, do we factor in the access to resources? Do we factor in the support? Because a child or human that has less support and resources than another is not going to have the same successes. So these are really important considerations that we need to make. Success in learning also brings in some teacher challenges, and I want to just call out some things. We often use our success, air quotes, not disrespectfully, in our marketing materials. So we'll say, on our websites, my students are on Broadway, my student's an astronaut, my student's this. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, right? We often use our successes as a way to justify our prices. My students get high first-class honors in all their exams. And when we carry just high goal, high level resources, that can actually have an impact on our student retention, right? So here's a couple of key points. So when we're only celebrating traditional successes, here's just some things to ponder. Who's going to feel invisible or left behind? Who's going to stop believing that they belong? Who's going to go to your website and think, oh no, this is not for me? And here's a really great question. When we are selling our studio, when we're selling our services, we want to attract that ideal client, right? We want to tell people who we best serve. But in doing that, are we being as inclusive as we possibly can? Are we eliminating certain people for the reason of success markers? Now, this is my Zoom room. I get to be candid. I have colleagues that will audition students for their studios, and their parameter is, will this student be successful in an exam? That's that, and you are welcome to do that. That is certainly how you can run your studio. But how many students are ready for exams? How many students might just need a year of really fabulous lessons to get started, to enjoy singing, to find their voice, and then they're ready for an exam? So this is what we're talking about today. Maybe we can be a little more inclusive if we check in with those success markers. And that brings to another challenge. That's a really difficult challenge. Success in learning often, and what success is and how we get to success, we have to make sure that the teacher, we, and our students and our parents, we're all on the same page of what success is, what our goals are, what's going on. I believe that this is the reason that so many teachers struggle with parents, because we do not have a bigger picture and we don't communicate what success can look like for our students outside of traditional models. So here is the big elephant in the room. Traditional markers of success, or long-term goals, even simple things like recitals or graded exams, or even the concept of consistent practicing. These are long-term goals, and they can be so overwhelming and discouraging to beginners, not just children. Any age student, an adult, is going to be overwhelmed by the thought of a recital if it took them 2 years to build up the confidence just to start lessons. So the reason for this, there's a reason why these long-term goals stress everybody out. Our brains are not wired for long-term planning. Evolution wired our brains for immediate survival. If you took 2 weeks to find food, well, you're dead, right? So we are not geared towards that structured planning. We are geared towards quick responses, quick rewards. And this makes it challenging for all students to connect with daily practice with a distant goal of the recital. And this is all falls under executive function skills, those cognitive skills that we build from the time we are born till into our early 30s. Executive function skills are a long game of organization, of focus, of delaying gratification, of reflecting on our progress, on redoing things, on iteration, going back, figuring out a better way of doing it. It takes years to develop those skills. And when you have a child and you set a goal of a recital, that recital does not exist in their consciousness. They do not have the ability. They've never experienced it. It's something they've never experienced. It's just this faraway thing. So when we're setting kind of practicing standards, quite often we're asking them to practice things that they just don't have a concept of or a reason to. That recital is like in another galaxy with that big black star that they just found. That's where that recital is. It's not in their conscious. And then when we get really close to the recital, you have all the students that freak out. Like, well, how did this happen? What? It's next week? And you have adults that have those same responses. So let's take this into planning a recital, right? So we get a new student in September and we have, say, a winter recital where we want them to sing some wintry songs or whatever. So just for fun, I asked AI to give me a list of all the steps required to prepare a young voice student for their first recital. And this is what I got. Now, don't go crazy looking at it because AI obviously has never taught a child to sing and they are missing a whole bunch of steps in here, just so you know. Okay. I would put 3 or 4 steps in between all of them. Plus, AI has not talked about how much review is necessary to solidify these skills and how much repeating of these exercises we need to do for them to feel confident in them. So this is a huge list. Right? So no wonder our students get overwhelmed. No wonder we get overwhelmed. No wonder our lesson pacing turns into a hot, rushing mess of trying to cram so many things in. So what we want to do is we want to discover ways along the steps from getting started all the way up to the recital. And we want to learn how to celebrate those micro steps of learning. And this is moving from goal-oriented progress to just celebrating the progress, those little steps. So not only, this is going to do 2 things. This is going to keep your students smiling, right? We're not telling them that universe away is where we're headed. We're going to focus on what is happening in the moment. Okay. And our students are going to keep smiling. They're going to be motivated. They're going to be discovering their passion for singing. They're going to have ample time to do repeats and reviews and go over things. Now, for the teacher, this allows us to avoid one of the nastiest, ugliest, miserable teacher traps in all of space and time. And that is that your skill, your worth as a teacher is not reflected in how quickly your students make progress. I want everybody just to read that. Just put it on a Post-it note and slap it on your piano. Well, maybe don't slap, just place it on your piano. This is a big trap. We get stuck in it all the time. And for the record, I fall into it too. I catch myself and go, wow, I'm really rushing my students today. Why am I doing that? So let's talk about some of the questions that people asked. And again, great questions. If you submitted a question, thank you. I didn't get to all of them. I try to kind of group them into themes and topics, but there were some themes and topics. So here's one of the great questions. I'm looking for ideas for fun ways to celebrate small wins and ways we can share that as a studio community versus individually in lessons. I love this question, but I'm going to start with celebrating the individual first, because if we're not celebrating the individual, like, it doesn't matter what we're going to do in our community. So here are some meaningful ways to celebrate those teeny tiny, micro, small vocal victories. I love that. I think I'm going to get a t-shirt that says vocal victories on it with stars and stuff. These are ways that we are going to help build confidence and reinforce progress. So the first one, moment marking language. Now, I know everybody's going to say to them, well, I always tell my students they're doing good. I always say good job and stuff. This is very specific use of language and words. Words are currency. You either give or take back. So acknowledging what they're doing and being specific. So, for example, did you feel how your breath supported that whole phrase? Or listen to how clear that word sounds now. So you're identifying those little micro wins. One of the things I love to do, and I think is so powerful, is reminding them how far they've come. Remember 3 weeks ago when this note was tricky and now it's just a whatever note in your voice? That's so amazing. Or acknowledging that they are fixing their mistakes. I noticed you found that mistake and you fixed it without my help. That is real musicianship. Those types of comments. One of my favorites, that natural smile in your voice just now, that's exactly what we want. Now, the other way of bringing students back into the room, this is an engagement strategy, asking them, and this also brings awareness, right? Our students are developing interoceptive skills, being aware of the sensations and what is going on in their bodies. So anytime we can bring our attention back to that is a win-win. So I love the question, how did you do that? Right? And you have that expression in your voice. It's not, hey, how'd you do that? It's like, how did you do that? Right? How did you do that? Now they have to think about what they did. They might not be able to articulate it, but you've brought attention to it and you want them to pay attention for it again. So moment marking language is a beautiful way to celebrate those micro wins. Physical celebrations, if your student is okay with it. If you have a student that is not into physical touch or is sensitive to that, be mindful. But high fives are gold, right? And you can have special high fives for different achievements. With some of my boys who are really into their bodies and really active, I would have a super high five and they would have to jump and smack my hand. Now, when we allow our students to have those physical moments, those physical expressions, again, engagement 101, they are going to be in the room. They are going to be breathing. They're going to be thinking. They're back into the moment, right? These are really important. Victory dances, having a little dance, that you sang that whole phrase. Let's do our victory dance. Taking a snapshot, a success snapshot, oh, that was really good. Let's take a picture. One of my singers was a dancer and she loved to bow. And it wasn't just a normal bow. It was like the arm around, the dying swan at the end of the ballet type of dance, type of bow. And that was a huge thing for her. It became part of our lesson. I'm like, that was amazing. Where is your bow? And immediately you see smiles and she's taking her bow. Now, I have to tell you, I would do the bow, but my lower back would be killing me. I'm like, oh, these bows are killing me. But she loved to do them. And of course, like singing teacher dance, a happy singing teacher dance, right? Like this deserves a little celebration. Let's have it like a physical moment of movement. So again, these are little fun things that we can do in our lesson, but they're huge. They are huge moments and they are remembered, right? If your student, one of the things with kids, parents drop them off and then parents pick them up. Parents go, how was your lesson? They go, fine. right? I guarantee if you're doing bows and you're doing happy dances, they might share that with their parents. Oh, well, I did really well and I got to do my bow. So there's a win-win there. The other thing is making it personal. So here's a couple of things. You must, I promise me, you will share the wins with parents or guardians or family. Parents don't know what they don't know. And I guarantee that they don't know that these little micro steps are so important to developing our little singers, our big singers, our adult singers. They're so important. And positive feedback like that reassures families of their investment in their lessons, right? It allows them to say, oh, great. Quite often, the only time I hear from my son's teachers is when he wrote one of his essays with ChatGTP. Other than that, I don't hear from them. It'd be nice to hear from the teachers to let me know what he was doing well, right? So the other thing was that role reversal. The other way we can make it personal. So when they have they develop some confidence in an activity, ask them to teach you it. I want you to show me how I can do that. That role reversal is so wonderful for building their confidence. And one of the things in a student-centered studio is you would be letting them choose how they want to celebrate their wins. If a happy dance doesn't make them happy, what would make them happy? Is it like my kids love tongue twisters? So if like the tongue twister jar, that was often a prize that they would go for, or singing their favorite song, right? Or letting them choose like something that really makes them feel good about their progress. Let them choose. And then going to the community thing. So I wanted to share this. This I think is brilliant. So one of my colleagues was sharing that she recently purchased one of those little mini Fuji Polaroid cameras. And she has in her studio now adopted a success selfie program. Now, this is part of her onboarding. Parents have to decide whether they want just personal success selfies or whether the success selfies can be shared within the studio walls and on the studio social media. So the little Polaroid cameras, the film, they're stickers. So when the picture comes out, you can peel off the thing and stick it to either a book or a page or a wall. So she has a success selfie bulletin board in the waiting room of her studio where all the wonderful moments with the students get put onto the board. Sometimes they have themes, sometimes they have special recognition, but everybody gets on the board one way or another, whether it's a beginner new student to first song memorized to whatever. And then if the family chooses to just keep it personal, they don't want to share their images anywhere, then the selfies are put on the students' books and then or they're emailed, pictures of them are emailed or texted to families. And they can celebrate within the family. And I think this is great. I mean, there's a bit of investment here. The cameras, I think in Canadian are like $80, $90. They're probably about $50 in the States. And the film is going to cost you. But I mean, she has seen so much success with this. It's something that the kids look forward to because you know how kids love those selfies. And it's been a really wonderful way to celebrate everybody's achievements at her studio. So there's one way of kind of celebrating as a community everybody's successes. She says it's really fascinating. She'll come out of her studio and there will be parents and students standing at the board trying to find all their friends and trying to find their pictures. And the kids want to show their parents, this is me. This is when I did this. Here's my selfie. So great opportunity, lots of fun. And I did get permission from my friend to share that. So just so you know. The key is making the celebrations when you're celebrating the micro steps. Here's some guidelines. It needs to be specific. to what they accomplished. Your language can't be good job, way to go, super duper. It needs to be specific. I love the way you sang that phrase. That was gorgeous. They need to happen immediately following the success. This is not something you save up for the notes and ship off later. Parents don't read those anyways, so just so you know. They need to be genuine to the achievement, right? And they can be silly. They can be silly, right? My studio had kids and advocational adults. And quite often, the advocational adults were just as excited to get the stickers, excuse me, to be part of the celebrations. So you can have fun with this. Most importantly, we're focusing on effort and progress, not perfection, right? So those little micro steps, they're so important. Every single step of the way, we need that. We need those little mini celebrations. So I want to use those examples with the question that came up a lot. What about your thoughts when it comes to intonation and redefining successes and standards? First of all, we did an entire live office hours about helping students who are developing pitch accuracy and singing confidence. An entire 45 minutes with oodles, and Mim has put that in the chat. So if you're watching this on the replay, check the YouTube channel. You'll see it in the playlist there. It was one of the very first episodes that we did. But let's look at celebrating these micro steps and applying it. So when we have students who are struggling, who are developing pitch accuracy, we need to find those small micro steps. So the first one for me is perhaps, are they able to do the hand signs? So that might be my first objective, my first goal. So I might say to them using that moment marking language, I see that you are it's much easier to do the hand signs this week. Remember last week it was hard and you were getting mixed up, but now you know your hand signs. That's awesome. And I know some people say, well, what if I don't hear any progress? What if I don't hear any things? And sometimes with our students that are developing pitch accuracy, we need to go super slow. But it might be just 2 notes, right? We might be working on do, re, going back and forth. I can still identify moments where they have tried really hard. I can see you're focused really well on doing this. I love your focus right now. And we can also focus on things like confidence or volume. I really like that volume you're singing with. That is very confident. Let's try that again, right? So there are little ways that we can focus on that. And again, I'm not thinking about the recital. I'm not worried about the recital because that's not in our window of what we're working on. So using those little moments and celebrating those. And we cannot compare those students to other students because, again, their learning journey and their progress is their learning journey. It's not that individuals. Now, we will have to communicate to parents, hey, we're working on this, but guess what? This takes time. This is a learned skill. We're going very slowly, but she's having fun. She's smiling. She did her little solfege study for me, and it was really well done. And we're still working on this, but she's doing great. So giving that feedback using moment marking language, high fives, low fives, super high fives, dances, all of that's going to keep your student motivated. And it's going to keep you motivated as well. Now, another question that came up quite a bit in the registration was, what about students who are absolutely terrified of performing? So again, if we're thinking about that recital and trying to get them to the recital, we are going to be frustrated. So we need to talk about the scaffolding. how we work those steps, how we get them to that place where maybe the recital is an option. So with this, I always direct teachers back to what is our first goal or objective when we get started with a singer who is developing those foundational skills. My first objective is that they actually enjoy themselves. That's so sometimes we forget, right? Sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this person to sing at the recital? I'm so stressed out. How about we just start with, are they having fun in your lesson? Do they feel comfortable in your lesson? Do you have activities that allow that fight or flight switch to be turned off for them to smile? Are they laughing? Are they smiling? Are they 100% engaged? Or are they in they're in the protective mode. I lost my train of thought there. Like sometimes the brain just tells them they're in danger. So when a student is stressed out, they are not learning anything. So it doesn't matter when your recital is. If they're stressed out and they're nervous and they're worried, and I want to stop anybody who's watching this video on repeat or on replay. If you're thinking if they can't participate in a lesson that they're not ready for lessons, shame on you. My Zoom room, I can be spicy. That means that we are not presenting information in a way that student can find accessible. So maybe the lesson needs to be sitting on the floor. Maybe they need to sit. Maybe we need to be. Maybe the lights are too bright. Maybe they need a fun game. Sometimes students need to start with non-singing activities before they move into singing activities to kind of move into singing. So maybe they would have more fun with a rhythmic chant with gestures. And then we move into singing. And then we find something else that they like. So our first goal is enjoyable, fun lessons. Your students should be leaving your space with a big smile on their face. And I've got a picture here of our animal-themed introductory singing class lesson plans. That is the learning objective. That is what it is all about. Young singers will discover music fundamentals through kid-friendly repertoire and engaging singing activities. And our goal is that they have fun and enjoy themselves and build singing confidence. Without those two things, there's no point in looking at any long-term goals, no matter what. So I have a teacher challenge for you. I would love, if you are a teacher that keeps notes, raise your electronic hand if you keep notes or if you send notes to families. If you are a note-taking teacher, okay, I want you to audit your notes. Are they celebratory? Are you marking those moments of amazing success? Specifically, are you just saying, good job on this song? What exactly did they do that was great? And I highly recommend, because our ears are trained to find the things that need fixing, I would love to challenge teachers to keep a success journal of all the little things that your students are doing that you are celebrating. Oh, that's going to change your perspective when you're teaching this week. You're going to start listening for all the good things that they're doing. We miss those things. We are oblivious to those things if we are constantly listening for the weaknesses and the things that need to be fixed. And I do air quotes because our students aren't broken and they don't need to be fixed. We are guiding them in discovery. With that, I want to remind everybody that you are doing an amazing job. You are here, you are leveling up, you are learning, you are asking hard questions. And I want to share this with you. A teacher's greatest virtue is not knowing all the answers, but patiently guiding students towards their own discoveries. Patience is one of the best skills we can have as educators. So I want to celebrate those of you doing this hard work, reflecting on. We should always be questioning our philosophies. We should always be challenging our practices. We should always be auditing our practices because we can always do better. We can always do more. We can always clean things up. So before we wrap up, I want to remind everybody that we are to the moon. So freaking excited. I actually can sleep now properly at night. Dr. Ginevra Williams' book, Teaching Singing to Children, Young Adults, 3rd edition, is 328 pages of the latest research and strategies. It is awesome. And Mim's going to show you how thick it is because she has the test book that just came off from the printer. Look at that bad boy. We're pre-ordering now. It's going to ship. It's going to ship December 9th, just in time to make sure that everybody can get it for Christmas. Now, for our international people, we will get to you. It'll be in January when we can open up international shipping. But right now we're shipping to Canada, the US, and the UK. So, my friends, I'm going to finish things off. We will get to the prizes, but I want to let everybody know December 30th is our last live office hours of this year, and we are going to be sharing a lot of inspiration and ideas for planning for an exciting new season of teaching. Looking back on your 2024 and looking ahead to a wonderful, exciting new year. That's what our live office hours is about. If you're watching this on the replay, I want to thank you for your time. You can reach me, Nikki, Nikki, at Full Voice Music. If you have any questions, we're always happy to answer your questions. I want to thank everyone so much for coming today. I want to thank my colleague Mim for being the ultimate prize giving machine there with the thing. And I want to challenge everybody this week when you are talking to your students. I want you to find those those language moments where you can really tell students where they're growing, what they should be listening for, where they're celebrating. And I do hope to see you at our next live office hours. As always, I am wishing everybody inspired teaching and happy singing. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.